Hey everyone, happy Monday. I am back in Washington, D.C. and I just landed and I'm on my way to Capitol Hill for my first set of meetings and votes for the week. And we've got a big couple of weeks coming ahead. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be wrapping up the summer session. The Republicans have been so focused on getting their big ugly bill passed that they're way behind on the appropriation schedule. So this week and next will be heavily focused on appropriations this week, including military appropriations, and the dreaded rescissions package may come back to the House from the Senate. If you recall, this is the package that decimates foreign aid for healthcare and our foreign allies, and yes, would defund federal funding for PBS and NPR and would harm radio and TV stations all over the country. We are also anticipating a series of crypto bills, and those will be fairly controversial as well, and we'll keep you all in the loop on that. But it is our third day and our final day in our Mythbusters series on the Big Ugly Bill, and today it seems particularly apropos to focus on the implications of the Big Ugly Bill for national security and protecting the homeland, and for our national energy security, which are two of the big myths that the GOP and the White House are trying to spin in their spin cycle. So let's get going. Let's talk first about the implications for national security. Now, I think it's fair to say to anyone who watches these things that this administration has been, well, a disaster for national security. First and foremost, we've seen just total chaos and disarray within the Department of Defense. Last week, it was reported that DOD cut off weapons to our biggest allies in Europe and Ukraine, and the president didn't even have an answer as to who it was. Today, he's reversing course. Over the last 6 months, they've completely gutted our foreign assistance programs. They've tried to shut down USAID. On Friday, there was a mass firing of some of the most senior diplomatic corps of the State Department. 1,300 people were escorted off of the premises at the State Department. So if you want to make America strong, you have to invest in diplomacy. And that means actually investing in the people, the organizations, the institutions, and the monetary support that makes that possible. That is one of the key pieces of American national security. So overall, the Trump administration is actually weakening our ties with our allies. And that is on top of these crazy tariffs that he is weekly, chaotically announcing that he's going to lodge these tariffs against our allies and trading partners. But what this big ugly bill does do is drop billions and billions and billions of dollars on weapons systems. And that includes nuclear bombs. It includes all different kinds of aircraft and other programs. And really, I think similar to some of the other provisions in this bill, is very much a boondoggle of investment in military systems. And it's not clear how they're going to get built, because many of the programs, both the defense programs as well as the civilian programs, the scientists and others that help make these programs possible, yes, were doged. They were fired. So it's a little unclear what exactly this defense section of the bill is all about, but I think it's fair to say it's fake tough guy stuff. And there's a lot of that in this bill, because one of the other huge sections in this bill, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, is the false claim that this bill is going to be used to secure the border. Now, let's be clear, the bill does include tens of billions of deficit spending dollars in a border wall that could never be completed to begin with, as well as private defense contracts for private prisons. Now, these are some of Donald Trump and his cabinet and allies' favorite private industries. In fact, starting in his first term, there were billions of dollars in contracts made to these private prisons to house individuals who were seeking asylum here in the United States, including families and children. And this bill includes billions and billions and billions of dollars in kickbacks to these private prisons to incarcerate individuals and families. In fact, it even says to detain families in the bill. That's what it says. In addition to that, the bill includes all sorts of new fees and is structured to make it much more difficult for people who are legally seeking asylum in this country to do so. So it undermines the due process rights of individuals here in the country, and I think we've all seen over the last several months how that all is playing out. Now, I think we can say, with all of that in mind, it is not going to secure the homeland, and in addition to that, basic things that the Trump administration could be doing to actually secure the border in places like New Mexico, like installing technology that our Border Patrol needs to stop fentanyl from coming into the United States, has not been installed and is still sitting in warehouses while drug cartels are still basically bringing drugs into our country. So we need to demand that this administration is held accountable, and it's very clear that the vast majority of this funding is really about giving kickbacks to private corporations. Now, speaking of that, that is what the energy portions of this bill is all about as well. Now, you're going to hear the White House and others claim that this bill is going to secure domestic energy security for the United States. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, because in fact, what this bill does is actually rescind billions of dollars in spending to modernize our electric grid, to ensure that our cars and all of these programs that are essential for transportation, energy, etc., are up to modern standards and not destroying the planet along the way. But because Republicans are so opposed right now, ideologically so, against clean energy, they stripped away billions of dollars in vital programs that industries all across the United States, including our utilities, including the auto industry, were utilizing to help support advanced manufacturing as well as to modernize our electric grid. And so the net result of that is that this bill is actually a huge job killer. In fact, this bill will kill over 840,000 clean energy jobs across the United States. And in addition to that, it's actually going to make energy costs higher. In fact, the CBO and others have scored the bill and found that it's going to jack up your utility bills by $400 a year for no other reason than they basically wanted to rescind these programs. But it doesn't stop there, because the bill makes good on a campaign promise that Donald Trump made to the oil and gas industry, which is it has huge giveaways. Speaking of boondoggles, huge giveaways to the fossil fuel industries. We are talking about removal of royalty rates, which frankly is not going to make your energy cheaper. It's all about putting more money into the pockets of CEOs who run these companies and their shareholders. It opens public lands to mandatory drilling and mining, both onshore and offshore, and it has a whole set of provisions that undermine fundamental environmental protections on our public lands and in our oceans, and essentially says that anyone who has a private monetary interest in those places can access them. So, it's really a bad deal, both for the American taxpayers, for the environment, and of course for our public lands. So, what does this all mean? I know many of you are asking, well, what comes next? How do we stop this? Can we stop it in implementation? Can it be reversed? And the answer is yes, but in order to rescind this bill, to end the damaging provisions that are in the big ugly bill, we have to have a House, a Senate, and a White House that ultimately can pass a bill and get it signed into law. Now, many of you know there's a big election coming up next year. Control of the House is very much at the center of next year's races. And here's what I think. If you have somebody representing you in Congress who says one thing to you and then goes and votes the other way, who's voting against the interests of working people in your community, who voted to cut healthcare for 17 million people and to actually take food away from children. If you have a member of Congress who voted to gut protections for our public lands and for the planet, I guess my question is, do you still want them serving you in Congress? So there's a lot of work ahead, and what's really, really important to know is that the power of the people still is with the people. Now, right now, there's a lot of giveaways happening, and the GOP is, I think, a bit drunk on power and overstepping their authority. And so if we're going to put back into place protections for our communities and for the planet, we got a lot of organizing ahead of us. So don't lose hope. Don't drop out of the fight, because we are going to need you more than ever. So that's my download. That's our third Mythbusters. And I better get to the Capitol, you guys. I got a lot to do. So I will see you all later. Happy Monday.